Welcome back to this reading vlog of The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Bakker. Today I am talking about chapter 17, and I've actually already started reading chapter 18, so hopefully some of that stuff does not blend over. However, in this chapter, there were a lot of things that happened that I probably missed because this chapter just had my least favorite thing about this book, and that is the politicking, the conversations, because again, the only two people I care about, the only two people I'm really emotionally invested in, whatever happens in this book, are Esmenet and Achamian. And those two people do not exist whatsoever in this chapter. It's all about Nair, Zinimus, Comphus, Kellis, etc., etc. The first line is, with Nair, Zinimus, and the 5 Conrian Palatines who had taken up the tusk, Kellis followed Nersi Proyas through the galleries of the Adiamine Heights. So yeah, they're going to this place, they're going to have a conversation, and Kellis has spent long hours in the probability trance assessing, extrapolating, and reassessing this extraordinary twist of circumstance. The probability trance. Interesting. Which is going to definitely lead into this young Padawan's Jedi training with, I can't remember the title, but I'll get there. But what mattered was that the Holy War eventually prevail against the Phanim and bear him to Shimei, to his father, his mission. So this reminds me. So there's 2 individuals that have left some great comments in the last episode. Lee is one. Hang on, I'll find the other one. And Sean C. 108. So both of them alluded to the fact, I guess without being spoilery, is that Kellis... So first of all, Sean said that Kellis says things in a simple way. Well, let me just read it. And I'll put it up here on the screen. With regards to you saying that a lot of Kellis Moengus say seems like a lot of pretty words without much meat behind them, you are right. While some stuff they say is profound, some of the stuff said by Kellis is just supposed to be smart-sounding BS designed to deceive his audience, which is mostly unwashed, uneducated masses of Irwa, kind of like the world's equivalent of modern-day self-help gurus. So, but also Lee mentions that Kellis seems to be more about what he can bring out in other people. And that is definitely shown in this chapter, which we'll get to a little bit later. Happens to do with Nair. Before we get there, we go into a flashback where we have Kellis had been a boy of 11 at the first time he heard this phrase being without beginning or end, ... This is when he's talking about the Logos. And the Pragma, that is who the the Jedi Master is. The Pragma struck him fiercely enough to send him rolling across Hearthstone. That which comes before determines that which comes after. So now it seems like we're talking again about determinism. It is the ground of what is young and what is old, and so cannot itself be young or old. Yes, the Logos is without beginning or end, and yet man, young Kellis, does possess a beginning and end, like all beasts. But what separates man from beast? Well, it's intellect. It's intellect. And there is a quandary of man. And he asks him, what is the quandary of man? That he is a beast, that he has appetites arise from the darkness of his soul, that his world assails him with arbitrary circumstance, and yet he apprehends the Logos. So this seems to be, again, like a conflict of our primal urges versus our intellect. That's how I'm reading it anyway. But the quandary of man, the solution to the quandary of man anyway, is to be utterly free of bestial appetite. And he also notes that what is the name we give to the dark source of thought? Legion. We call them the Legion. So it's a typical situation where we're trying to give some exposition through dialogue. We're trying to go back in time into this flashback to show, I guess, Kellis's principles or how he was led to believe. And so that's going to inform, I guess, how he acts moving forward. At least it appears to be so far. But we also meet somebody else. So the guardsman yanked the man into sunlight. He wobbled drunkenly, heedless of his exposed phallus, because we all know that Bakker loves the word phallus. And this is Zunarit, he said after a moment, our king of tribes at the Battle of Chios. So this is the man that was taken into possession by the emperor. And then we go back in time to another flashback of Kellis. So this chapter is a lot of flip-flopping. I kind of was hoping there's a little bit more of that backstory. I'm usually not really excited about flashbacks, but I think because this was giving us more insight into Kellis, it was interesting to me. The Logos is without beginning or end. Okay, so he keeps repeating this mantra over and over and over. And Zarius approaches Nair. They're having this conversation because, Nair is the one who's like, I'm going to come up and join this holy war and be a badass and whatever it is he's going to do. But yes, Zarius said, to break one man is to break nothing, I suppose. It's too easy to break a man. but to break a people. Surely that is something. No. So he's trying to throw in Nair's face how he has taken his leader and he's made him into a slave. It doesn't faze Nair whatsoever, because he says that Comphis was his lesson. Comphis, the emperor asks. At Ciuth, I learned what Comphis has learned. He is a general bred on many battlefields. From the Gelioth, he learned the effectiveness of disciplined pike formations against mounted charges. So he's essentially praising Comphis. He's saying, look, I learned so much from this guy, how he destroyed everybody. And at Ciuth, I learned, he continued, turning his hard eyes upon Comphis, that war is intellect. Intellect. Keyword, italicized. What was the other time we heard intellect in this chapter? Well, it's what separates man from beast, as the pragma, I think he was called, tells Kellis. Let me go fast forward, because this is when we're getting into the conversation where is it going to be Comphis or is it going to be Nair? The question is whether we can trust Sylvendi over you. Comphis is like, what the hell are you talking about, man? But how could this even be an issue? Trust Sylvendi over me? He laughed harshly. This is madness. I'm getting some 300 vibes. Your madness, Comphis, Saban grated, and your uncle's. If it weren't for your fucking forecasts of doom and your thrice-damned indenture, none of this would be an issue. Ooh, touche, touche. And this is when Nair actually elevates Kellis. He actually gives him credit for the reasoning behind what he's doing right now, because his herds were slaughtered, our camps burned. I became a chieftain of nothing, so his entire people has been destroyed. From this man, he continued, gesturing to Kellis, I learned that outlanders could have honor. As a slave, he fought at our side against the Quoti. Through him, through his God-sent dreams, I learned of your war. I was without my tribe, so I accepted his wager. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. The two commenters who mentioned Kellis being sort of a means of control for these people. And I noted in a reply, but I'll say it again here because it's worthwhile, is that when you are creating a character or situations or outcomes in a book, do you keep it from the reader? Do you keep it from the characters only? Do you keep it from both? Feels like Bakker is trying to keep it from both of us, because when I'm reading this, like I said, I don't hear anything profound with the exception of the poetic words that Kellis uses, but the concepts are extremely simple. So to me, without any hints otherwise, I'm thinking Kellis thinks he knows shit, he thinks he's smart, but has he also been duped? I think that's the question as well. Like, is this pragma guy feeding him all this stuff that's just utterly bullshit? I don't know. Or is Kellis merely a tool to get the world to do a certain thing and the people who inhabit it? Who knows? Who knows? That is the question. I'll find out sometime. It takes me a long time to get through these books, but yeah, it was an okay chapter. I really enjoyed, even though it didn't feel particularly unique, I liked seeing more of Kellis's backstory. Again, not a big fan of flashbacks, and the execution itself was something we've all seen 1,000 times before, right? It was kind of like the sensei with the student, where he's incredibly aggressive. He's trying to hammer in these concepts, but these concepts, they're not particularly clever. They're not particularly deep. They're very, very obvious. And that makes me wonder if what Kellis is being taught is just basic bullshit, or does Bakker actually think that it's clever, or is Bakker tricking us as the reader to inject these simple concepts into this man to speak them in such a way that makes them sound profound, and then so he can distill these into the quote-unquote simpler people of the lands to do his will? I have no idea, but at least it's got me thinking, and I like books that get me to think. But I would say I probably wouldn't be thinking as much if it weren't for you commenters out there, so keep them coming. Try not to spoil it, but I appreciate the commentary because it allows me to view this book in a very different perspective. All right, that's it from me. I will see you in the next video with Chapter 18.